Wakey, wakey, hello, good morning. And many thanks indeed for joining us here on the Morning Prime. I trust that you had a lovely restorative night. It is another day that we meet here on the 8th of November 2023 on Morning Prime. Today, being Wednesday, we have Global Today coming your way, critical analysis of foreign policy, diplomacy and security, beginning here in the country, around the region and of course the world. What is the current state of play? So South Africa right now called on they've recalled their diplomats who are in Israel, and of course this is in light of what they've been stoutly against the humanitarian crisis and how also Israel continues apace to lob rockets and also affect the operations of aid in Gaza. We shall be looking at that as well and just following up the latest development that is happening there in South Africa. And also it is indicated that Wagner as well will be joining Hezbollah as far as some of international publications are concerned. What does it portend for that particular war that is ongoing still? Here in the country, we shall be looking at what is happening, of course, in the local arena. Yesterday was a big day for Mwangaza. Today, we know the fate of her, where the Senate will determine whether she stays in office or not. And we continue pace looking at also the cost of living that everyone now is crying foul. Yesterday, there was a parliamentary group meeting, and we had the president and the members of parliament also really highlighting this particular issue. We're joined this morning by Dr. Hassan Kanenje, who's the director of the Horn Institute. Also, we do have with us as well Professor Peter Kagwanja, who is the CEO of Africa Policy Institute. We have with us Professor Naomi Damba, who is a foreign policy and, of course, a defense expert. Also, we do have with us as well, who will be joining us much later, I should say, Yusuf Hassan, who is a member of a committee of a delegation of foreign relations and defense and also intelligence in the National Assembly, and is a member of Parliament for Kamukunji constituency. So we have a full packed show, but let's see how the weather will be today. All right, let's look at what we have in the dailies this morning, and this is what you're waking up to on the front page of The Standard today. gloomy state of the nation is what is headlining the front page of the Standard this morning, as the president faces a nation drained by the high cost of living in his second annual State of the Nation address tomorrow. Kenyans expect that even as he highlights achievements of his 14-month-old administration, he will list concrete steps to make their lives better. This story continues on page 2 and 3 of the Standard this morning. Cost of living, rising costs spooks Kenyans to a point of despair, even as they hope that the bombers' talks will craft new measures to ease the economic suffering. In agriculture, President Ruto has constantly praised the fertilizer subsidy. Let me try and zoom in so we can read together. For increased crop yield, but food prices still remain high as farmers cry out over high fuel prices. Talk of justice. The president and allies accused his predecessor of weaponizing the criminal justice system, but he now increasingly faces the same charges from his critics. What about Parliament? The president has established dominance in Parliament, drawing criticism for weakening the opposition despite his call for stronger oversight. What about corporate health? Companies hit by a difficult operating environment are laying off employees and issuing profit warnings. This is the current state of play. Even when we look at the corporate tax, almost 75% of these organizations, they don't pay the corporate tax. These are some of the issues. Looking at fuel as well, oil prices have hit record highs, ushering a cost of living crisis. And by the way, now we have also the CS of energy, right, recalling back his words on pointing that the fuel will rise to 300 shillings right now. As it stands, we're paying 217 shillings and 36 cents, the price of a litre of super petrol in Nairobi. The price of a litre of diesel also in Nairobi is 205 and 47 cents. On taxes, Kenyans purchasing power eroded by an unforgiving tax regime. That is a story that you want to follow in today's Standard. Also, we have US-based man fights with wife over child. And remember, also you have Enterprise Magazine coming in handy for you every Wednesday. Get all the wise as far as entrepreneurship is concerned. Why school heads want extra cash? This is on page 5. Fight and theft rule Kenya's crime world on page 6. Looking on the teaser on top here, the case against Kawira Mwangaza to impeach or not, that's the question. Ruto advisor D takes on industry, it castigates manufacturing sector regarding taxes also and bribery. You can read all about it, well spread out for you on page 17 of the business pages at the Standard today. And big fight for 684 million rare mask, right? That is on the world page. It's a very interesting story there about this rare mask from Gabon that actually went into auction. So someone's just sold it for a song, not knowing what he was handling was a very, very expensive mask that harks back into history of the Gabonians here, that this is a story history that is steeped in their belief, and it was going for 684 million shillings. And this gentleman had actually sold this particular mask, not knowing the value of it, for 24,000 shillings. Now there's a court case there. You can read the story inside the Standard today. Arsenal seeks to fire back. That is on the sports pages of the Standard today. Now Kenya Kwanza MP's plea to Ruto on fuel. That is what is on the front page of the Daily Nation today. President cites stabilization fund, tells lawmakers they need to be popular at the right time, right? So the sentiment here is that there's a growing hostility, and some Kenya Kwanza MPs yesterday pleaded with the president, that is President William Ruto, to reintroduce the fuel subsidy program, lamenting that their constituents are increasingly becoming hostile to them because of high palm prices, as well as additional taxes. A section of ruling party legislators also said to have spoken out against the planned deployment of Kenya's police officers on the UN peace mission in Haiti. You have the story on page 4 and 5. And the president told them that, well, this time is not about being popular, right? You'll get popular in due course, but right now, things have to be done regardless of what the sentiment is on the ground. That is the story that you want to follow on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation today. Is there light at the end of the tunnel for Mwangaza? That's the abiding question today. Meru Governor Kawira Mwangaza will today know her fate as senators vote to either uphold her impeachment or dismiss the charges. You have the story on page 6 of the Daily Nation. Tough times forces retirees back to work. That is now the reality on the ground. The high cost of living in the country has eroded the ability of many Kenyans to save money or make any meaningful investments. This has left many retirees staring at poverty at the end of employment. It also means that elderly people will continue to work in order to afford their basic needs. This also calls into question the adequacy of pension scheme payouts in the country. You have the story on page 10 of the Daily Nation this morning. And CBC system will need some adjustments, says primary school heads as a warn of crisis. This story continues on page 12 of the Daily Nation this morning. People Daily, no, we have the Star, which is up before the People Daily. UDA MPs confront, quote unquote, Ruto over cost of living. Legislators warn cost of living is making Kenya Kwanza unpopular with Kenyans. You have the story on page 4 and 5 of Star this morning. And Mwangaza must go as governor dismantled evidence. Some pictures here. Her holding court with some of her lawyers, 9 of them, by the way, that are representing her in this particular case. And the hearing begins. Meru Governor Kawira Mwangaza with her husband Murenga Baichu in the Senate with her lawyer during the hearing of her impeachment case and accompanied by her son and daughter in Nairobi yesterday. Also, the Sadba love born in Kenya birthed vicious custody fight in US, and we need to plant 1.5 billion trees yearly to hit target. That is what we have CS3 saying here. And city man who killed wife, he caught in landlord's bed freed. That is story that is on page 19. That has been scaled down to manslaughter. And Curriculum Institute cuts down JSS subjects from 14 to 9. That is a burden off their shoulders, so to speak. You have the story on page 9. People Daily, Ruto MPs cry out over high prices. Kenya Kwanza leaders confront president over biting Economic Times, saying the matter is fomenting hostility among the supporters. But head of state maintains there was no reason for panic. And the story continues apace on page 4 of the People Daily this morning. And we can see President William Ruto interacting with MPs during the Kenya Kwanza Parliamentary Group meeting at State House in Nairobi yesterday. Also on the side, Bakawira on the cross for second round. Court grants father custody of an infant. And looking on the teaser on top here, Kenyans devise new survival tactics, sagging under the heavy burden of taxes. Shops reject M-Pesa payments. Family abandon cars for public transport. Matatu drivers carry more passengers to compensate punishing cost of fuel, while wage earners opt to walk to work in what has now become the new normal. That is the adjustment. You can follow the story on page 5 of the People Daily this morning. State reveals plan to increase land fees up to 100 times. Plan part of a World Bank-backed revenue expansion push. Incorporation of a trust to cost 50,000 shillings from 500. Home and land buyers abreast for a new hit after the Land Ministry proposed to increase the number of service fees and the World Bank-backed revenue expansion plan. We have a list here. Old versus new services fees also broken down for you. Ministry says revision to harmonize fees it considers unreasonably low or unaligned to market rates. This is how it is. Application for incorporation of a trust. All fees is 500 change. That will actually be a huge change there. From 49,500 to 50,000 now. Application for replacement of title section from 500 shillings. That you will be paying 405,000 is a change. The new price is 5,000. Application for the preparation of a surrender of lease is also listed. The application for preparation of any instrument not herein above described. Application for issuance or certificate of title. Also application of registration of documents as well. Resubmission of registration of rejected documents as well. There is a new price. Application for official search. Now it is going to be 2,000. Right, from 1,500. And of course, this is from the Ministry of Lands, as you can see it. Kenya wins bid to lead Africa's push to cut dollar dominance is another story that you want to follow inside the Business Daily. Looking on the ticker there, let me try and expand it so that we can see or read together. The farm freeze expansion plans on economic wars. The majority of Kenyan farms have frozen expansion plans in an economic setting where operating costs are rising amidst persistent cash flow challenges. Analysis of findings of a monthly private sector survey shows this. Airtel Africa sticks to $825 million fresh capital plan despite loss Also, Swiss Bell Hotel to manage Emery's Nairobi Safari Club. The rest of the details tucked away inside today's Business Daily. In Tanzania, strong dollar curtails foreigners' role at Dar Security Exchange. Currency risk and global measures to mitigate inflation have had an adverse impact on trading at the Dar es Salaam Stock Exchange after the participation of foreign investors at the bourse declined by 66.9% in the first 9 months of this year compared to the corresponding period in 2022. You can read the rest of the details there inside the Citizen. High airfares, a barrier to tourism in Africa. That is what is emerging. There was the World Tourism Conference that was in Rwanda. And you can read the rest of the details inside the Citizen as well. Then, why a good support system is a valuable asset. You can read all about it inside the Citizen in Uganda. In Tanzania, in Uganda, Daily Monitor, Western Central Tech top government jobs. Right. Report recommends that the government develops a policy that guides the recruitment process with the end goal of employing people based on regional balanced population, academic qualifications, among other parameters. You can read all about it inside the Daily Monitor in Uganda this morning. And homes, real estate taxes you must pay. All that tucked away inside that particular segment of the publication today. And UK-US issue fresh terror alerts in Uganda. And you can read the rest of the details inside the Daily Monitor if you're waking up in Uganda. The East African this week, how Uganda AGOA ban will impact EAC. The economic effects are focused to spill, it says, to spill over to the regional trading partners as the value chains are heavily integrated. You can read the rest of the details inside the East African this week. Why Kenya got cut off Kampala oil supply deal. Uganda is upset that it was kept in the dark about the government-to-government deal with 2 Gulf states. You have the story on page 34 of the East African this morning. Envisaged benefits of Ruto's visa waiver. The country expects more trade and visitors, even as it hopes for reciprocal gestures. You can follow the story on page 5 of the East African. The week, the Gaza offensive. Does Israel have a plan? That is what we have on the front page of the week. And also, that is the UK version. The US version is holding this. A true believer. What Michael Johnson's election as House Speaker means for the GOP and the nation. We shall continue to show you other publications of foreign affairs. Recent copy as well is there, amongst others, and the editorial cartoon. But for now, let me just reveal the faces of our panelists. You just heard their names. As we want just to get introductory remarks from there, we begin with Dr. Hassan Kanenje. Hassan Kanenje, good morning.
Good morning.
We missed you last week.
Yes, I think we must have been in Addis Ababa eating Nigeria.
All right. But, what was happening in Addis?
I'm now back. You know, Addis is the political capital, the political seat of the African Union, and so there's always a lot of activities taking place there in trying to shape the direction of the continent, especially at these tumultuous times. Mm-hmm. Where we do not know how the world is going to look like, especially considering the multiple crises, in Ukraine, in the Middle East today, of course, as well as what is happening in our own region with the conflict in Sudan unraveling. But we are hopeful, and we expect that Kenya, being an anchor state, also a diplomatic capital in this region, is going to play its rightful role in ensuring that at least, we do not fan the flames of war. We contribute to peace and conflict resolution.
All right, fantastic. So they say Dinanesh or Dina? Do you know smattering of Amharic?
Dinanesh.
Yeah.
From man, Dinanesh.
Dinanesh
for a woman.
Yeah, Dinanesh for a woman. Dinane?
Dinanesh for a man.
For a man. All right,
Dinanesh. Say Amasagnalo.
Amasagnalo.
All
right, that is.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
All right, fantastic. I know Noami Dambo will not even try that.
He's half Habesha.
He's half Habesha.
Yes.
I know Abidamo has no element of any Abesha. But let's hear from our Professor Peter Kagwanji as well. Good morning.
Morning. Thank you, Dibat, for this invite. My colleagues. Noami Daba, karibu sana.
Yes,
we missed you. I had a very good start of the week. We've been training Kenya Revenue Authority within the National Defense University, where we're carrying a course on ethics and national security. I personally specialize on national interests. That's why I keep on talking about we must have a policy that is, national. I mean, national centered. Our policies must be centered on our interests. The course has been offered to virtually every department of government, and I find this very, very useful way of harmonizing our view, basically fostering what we call patriotism from a common understanding. I think we did that for Parliament, top leadership of Parliament before. We've done it for the Auditor General, we've done it for the medical professionals, and now it's very interesting. It's for the top management of the KRA. I think it's the third time that's been trained. I find this the most innovative way of bringing Kenya back in terms of producing a citizen. It might be too late, but I mean, to advance, because this needed to have been done at the National Youth Service level. That's what Israel and other countries are doing. You induct after Form 4, all your kids are trained on a common understanding. In the West, they trained, Western civilization. So I find that course very interesting. That's what we have been at from Monday. It's going for 10 days.
Going for 10 days. Well, for a while I thought there that you're talking about the National Defense University,
Kenya.
And then KRA. So I wondered, are these one of the 1,400 recruits that are being trained on defense
not
now
really.
that they may be deployed?
I don't want to.
Not
really. It's just in what you call. This is not really training for what. It's a question of awareness creation about your responsibility as a Kenyan. We talk a lot about rights. Your rights. We have never known what our responsibilities as citizens is, and I think this is what is coming. It's not for producing KRA officers. No. It is looking at what we call economic security, because we've emphasized very much on other national security, but economic security. I'm headed to Tok. This also to plant trees. So thanks to Minister Kidiki, CS Kidiki, for giving us permission to go and plant trees.
So on Monday,
we want.
So how many trees are you going to plant on Monday? Or are you starting today yourself?
No. We have a big occasion at a place called what they could call it Nikiroliti. Let's call it All Kirolit. Tok. It's a school area, and that's derived from a tree itself. All Kirolit is a tree. And that is a village where some of my close relatives come from. So we're going to plant trees, about 10,000 of them. There are about 200 or so of us who are coming from Nairobi. So it's a big event, actually. But we planted before Minister Kidiki announced. So it's a huge coincidence, and it has rained. So it's good. I'm very happy about the environment. I'm hopeful, at least from that perspective. I'm a very hopeful Kenyan. Yeah, the rains have come.
The rains are here. All right, let's hear from Yusuf Hassan. Good to see you. Good morning.
Good morning.
At this time, where were you yesterday?
I beg your pardon?
At this time, where were you yesterday?
Yesterday, I attended the PG at State House.
Yeah, that's what I expected. So you can actually tell us how it was.
But I had a very busy week. The whole of this weekend we were sitting, the Committee for Foreign Affairs, Intelligence and Defense, to vet the 27 ambassadors and high commissioners that were nominated by the President. And this is the biggest exercise. This is the biggest single vetting of ambassadors since the process of vetting of our ambassadors and high commissioners started with the new constitution. So we're looking at the qualities and the people, the qualifications of the people who've been nominated. And we sat over the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and we completed that on Sunday. And today we are tabling the recommendations of the committee in the National Assembly. And then on Monday we started another exercise, which is the review of the supplementary budget for the various government ministries. My committee oversights the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Defense, the Ministry for East African Community, and also the National Intelligence Agency. So we have a lot of work. These are critical government departments, and three of them are in the National Security Council. So it's quite important that we look at whether they're well funded, what their gaps are, and to cut any wastages or leakages that may come as a result of some of the actions of various government ministries.
Right, thank you. Thank you. All right, you'll also highlight some of the things that were discussed yesterday in the PG as well. The cost of living, I think it took a huge chunk of that. Let me just hear from Manuel.
I'm not so sure about that.
Before we come to you, all right?
There were many other things that were discussed.
There were many other things.
Yeah, but it was not an open gathering, so I'm not in a position to sort of speak about it.
Okay, all right. I'll respect that as well. Let's hear from Professor Noah Midamba.
The Lama excited to team up together again with our colleagues here. I've not seen Kanenje for a long time, and so I was wondering whether it's globe-trotting and disappearing somewhere. We are facing a very tough international situation and also domestic debate. I'm concerned about the government not having control over cost of living. And also the role of Council of Economic Advisor for the President. I was concerned about David Ndii going back, blaming Uhuru for the current state of affairs. And I think it is time that the President reassess who sit on the Council of Economic Advisor, pull in people like Joroge, a good old hand, steady that can steer the economy. I think we need to look at the issue of subsidizing fuel because what Uganda's done and others. And so that really is my first concern. People are raising questions about the president travel, and I don't think I'm one of those people that feel very strong the president need to travel. But the travel need to be carefully calculated, and so that our neighbors, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Uganda, DRC Congo, you need to get a hand on what's happening with our neighbor, because that is where most of our trade is coming from. The world is taking shape in a different land right now. The Chinese economy just reversed for the first time. The balance of trade is negative. America is going through election, and the war in the Middle East must be watched very carefully. So we need a team in the foreign service that carefully craft the role and responsibility of the president. I'd like to end with the visit of King Charles that the president handled very well, but we need to follow it up such that we make sure that Kenya benefits.
Thank you. We shall be looking at other issues as well, just regarding the cost of living. But let's just begin with what was happening yesterday, where Troubled Meru Governor Kawira Mwangaza has pleaded not guilty to all the charges against her, paving the way for the Senate to proceed with the impeachment proceedings. On the first day of the proceedings, the County Assembly presented its case, warning the Senate not to fall for the governor's demeanor as being meek and innocent. And as KTN's political affairs correspondent Daniel Karuki reports, day one saw Kawira's advocates and those of the Meru County Assembly putting out strong presentations for their positions.
Have already interacted.
Tuesday afternoon in the Senate, embattled Meru Governor Kawira Mwangaza was once again in a familiar territory. This was her second time before the Senate, But unlike before, when she faced a select committee, today she faced the plenary and first was pleading guilty or not guilty.
How do you plead to the 7 charges? Guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
The County Assembly described the governor as a repeat offender who did not deserve any favor from the Senate.
Mr. Speaker, I was listening carefully. I want him to clarify, did he mean that the Senate was behaving like Russia? It couldn't do a proper job. It couldn't do a rope. Mr. Speaker, can he clarify?
When Kawira asked, after they took me to the Senate, what happened to me? Nothing happened. Kaende. And therefore, that's why we said, this time, we urge you to repeat the execution of Kawira, and we see whether the rope will break again.
The governor is facing accusation of misappropriation and misuse of county resources, nepotism and related unethical practices, bullying, vilification and demeaning other leaders. She is also accused of illegal appointments and usurpation of statutory powers, contempt of court and contempt of the assembly.
Mr. Witness, will I be wrong if I tell you you belong to committee maximum because you've admitted before this honorable house that you've been receiving money?
Now, if your convictions are true, shouldn't it have bothered you enough for you to have considered refunding or refusing the acceptance?
The person culpable is the one paying us for service not rendered.
The governor's lead counsel, Elisha Ongoya, dismissed the charges, arguing that her client is innocent and the petitioners have no solid case against the governor.
Who does the letter say has made a decision? It is a fairly short letter. Just read.
This is to notify you that the government has decided.
Pause. That who?
The government has decided.
That the government has decided. And to your knowledge, who heads the government or the county government?
It's the governor.
Meru. In Meru particularly?
It's the governor, Mr. Speaker.
The name of the governor?
Kawira Mwangaza.
Thank you.
The governor's side will have their day Wednesday as they seek to defend the county head over the 7 charges leveled against her by the county assembly. This is the second impeachment case filed against the governor at the Senate following a long-running friction between her and the county leadership. Daniel Kariuki, KTN News, Senate, Nairobi.
Wednesday is today, and of course we'll be telling that story for you. Now, President William Ruto chaired the Kenya Kwanza Parliamentary Group meeting at the State House in Nairobi as the executive is pushing for the passage of several crucial bills in the bicameral parliament. The proposed legislations include one on conflict of interest, the anti-money laundering bill, and the anti-terrorism financing. The parliamentary group meeting is coming days before President William Ruto addresses his second State of the Nation address scheduled for Thursday this week. And Kenya and the Czech Republic have pledged to enhance their bilateral relations and exploit existing investment opportunities. President William Ruto says the two countries will soon sign a negotiated economic agreement that will see Kenya access duty-free and quota-free markets. The head of state who hosted Czech Republic Prime Minister Peter Fiala at State House Nairobi argued that an equal partnership is paramount for mutual benefits. On health, President Ruto appreciated the Czech Republic's support through the Slovak-Czech-sponsored pediatric heart surgery mission at the Mater Hospital, which was launched in March 2019, I should say. Professor Fiala, on his part, said investors from his country will take advantage of existing cordial relations to exploit opportunities in Kenya.
Making it easy for citizens to travel. And I have undertaken to him to look at the possibility of visa waiver for Czech citizens to visit Kenya without any restrictions so that we can enhance our trade and we can also enhance our tourism sector
I congratulate Mr. President that the Economic Partnership Agreement of Kenya and the EU was concluded in June this year. It will boost our business cooperation when it is signed. Kenya has always been our major economic partner in East Asia. Export to Kenya is about $20 million US. Import from Kenya in last year was $10 million US. Also, the future agreements between our countries are very important.
The government has warned Kenyans against falling prey to land cartels by avoiding shortcuts when seeking land documents. While on a tour of the Kilifi Lands Registry, Lands Cabinet Secretary Alice Wahome said that land registries across the country had been infiltrated by fraudsters who cheat citizens with promises of faster processing of title deeds. She added that her ministry is investigating activities of all the 97 land registries in order to weed out the cartels who have been swindling millions of shillings from unsuspecting Kenyans and issuing them with land documents. And in a way, to streamline services, the ministry has embarked on digitization of land records to offer a secure storage process for the land documents in the country.
Wale ambayo wanataka kupata shamba, don't look for shortcuts. Kwa sababu utaenda udanganywe, upeane pesa yako, upoteze pesa, alafu uanze kupigana na wale haswa wenye hiyo shamba. We umekuja haraka, umedanganywa, umelipa pesa yako kidogo kidogo hapo. Na hiyo pesa si ati uko na pesa nyingi ya kutupa. You must ensure that you do a search. Wakenya tafadhali, mbele ya kutoa pesa yako, ndio ati uwe mwenye shamba, ununue shamba. Kuna wakora na ni wengi, na kazi yao tangu kutoka asubuhi, jioni ni kuingia hapa kwa maofisi ya serikali, kuingia kwa mashamba ya wenyewe, wakitafuta ni shamba gani watafamia. Alafu wewe ukuje hapo haraka, shamba mzuri unaambiwa, wewe bila shamba.
All right, from Cabinet Secretary and Cabinet Secretary for Foreign and Diaspora Affairs, Musalia Mudavadi, has reassured members of the diplomatic community in Kenya that the country is committed to intensifying its efforts to bolster economic diplomacy with the aim of expanding opportunities for its citizens. Speaking during his inaugural formal meeting with heads of mission in Nairobi, Mudavadi underscored Kenya's steadfast dedication to global peace and security. He emphasized the nation's significant contribution to peacekeeping missions and various continental and international bodies, highlighting its unwavering commitment to global stability.
Please, there is no, then the UN family. That I know DG was going to raise that. Yes, then we will have one with the UN family. So colleagues will be guided.
Kenya aspires to strengthen its economic diplomacy in order to increase economic opportunities for our people. We are delighted to be a pilot nation for the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, the world's largest free trade zone with a population of 1.2 billion people and a GDP of $3 trillion US. As you are aware, Kenya sits at the confluence of three important regions of Africa: the Horn, the East African Community, and the Great Lakes region, thus becoming an important gateway to the rest of the continent. I appeal to investors from your countries to take advantage of Kenya's strategic geopolitical positioning, our macroeconomic stability, as well as the country's progressive economy for mutual prosperity and growth.
All right, of course, meeting the members of the diplomatic corps. Let me just clear some flame there. Excuse me. And I was wondering if Yusuf Hassan, you were in attendance for that particular meeting. You as a member of the delegation on foreign relations, defense, and intelligence.
No, that was a meeting between the new minister and the diplomatic corps. But we met him shortly after he had met them. And there's a very significant decision that has been made. If you remember that some 6 or 7 months ago,
yes,
the Ministry of Foreign Affairs lost its responsibility to manage our diplomatic relationships. And the government had issued a directive saying that any ministry could meet with any ambassador or any foreign representative in our country without going through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And you know, this is a core function of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Once you remove that aspect of the Vienna and the Geneva Conventions that manage the affairs of a country's diplomatic affairs, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs simply becomes a desk, you know, an administrative desk. And our committee was very concerned about that from the very beginning. But somehow that decision was made, and luckily that decision has now been reviewed, and it has actually completely put our diplomatic relations in a limbo, because you would have an ambassador calling them the Ministry of Agriculture, for example, which has nothing to do with foreign affairs, which does not know what our position is. And there has been an element of crisis. And it had demoralized the professionals at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So I think now the government has decided that it is not working, and it should not have been done even before. I think the reason why it was done was that the Cabinet Secretary perhaps had not acted in the right way, and he was not efficiently and cohesively managing the affairs of foreign affairs. But now that we have a substantial figure like the Cabinet, the Prime Cabinet Secretary, as the Minister, I think that responsibility has gone back to its rightful place. And I think the message that the Cabinet Secretary, the new Cabinet Secretary, was giving to the diplomatic services is that it's the ministry, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is the anchor of our foreign affairs, our diplomatic contacts, and therefore things are going to go back to where they belong.
And so they're substantively firmly handling the docket the way it was before. But I'm inclined to wonder then, what really informed such a decision? Does the minister seek or advice from experts when they make such a huge policy?
But was it the minister who made the decision?
It wasn't the minister? But
no,
we assume.
I think the minister
was just implementing.
The minister must have been forced, because why would you give him a major responsibility of your ministry just like that? I think there must have been some shortcomings, because the main argument when it was implemented was that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was archaic, was bureaucratic, and was not handling diplomatic correspondence and engagement as efficiently and as quickly as is required by the modern times, the modern ways of diplomatic engagement, because we are now entering digital diplomacy. You know, it's not like writing a telex that will arrive at its destination some few weeks or some few days. It's instant communication. So I think the ministry must be able to adjust to be able to function in the digital age, and communication, correspondent information between one government department and the other, and one country demanding a particular action should be instantaneous, that the decisions should be made.
Right.
But also the ministry had a problem in the sense that you have an activist, internationalist president, a president who is conducting his own diplomatic affairs and is moving rapidly and faster, engaging world leaders. So you require also an agile, supple,
switched on
ministry, which is running just as fast, if not faster than the president, in executing diplomatic needs and the diplomatic affairs of the country.
All right. All right. Let's say from Dr. Hassan Kanenje. Also, we've seen the president calling for, visa entries free into the country, and everyone is questioning how well, it is a good gesture, as some of the publications will put it, but another question is being raised as well. What does this really portend in terms of just opening our countries or our borders, for visa-free entry. Every other diplomatic or any other head of state that comes into the country can say this is part of the bargain. For Angola, it will be a visa-free entry. South Africa, it will be a visa-free entry. At the end of the day, what is the role of a visa if we now let everyone just come into the country, in and out the way they want to?
Dibal, first of all, before I comment on that, I don't know what the Czech Prime Minister was thinking, because I thought he said, Kenya has been an important partner in East Asia. Someone need to remind him he's actually in Africa and he's in Kenya. It's not, we're in East Asia.
East Asia, yeah.
Yes. So maybe he was reading a speech that, someone wrote for him, while visiting East Asia, because we're not in East Asia. Reminds me of the days of Bush, and spoke about Nigeria being a continent next to Africa.
Brilliant. I missed that.
Yes, no, I was paying attention to it. Now, I think before I transition to that, that's what Mheshimiwa has said. I think it's important the Ministry of Foreign Affairs does what it's actually supposed to be doing. And I think a lot of us were concerned. Even diplomats themselves, if you spoke to them, they were actually concerned about that sudden change. Because when the SGR is not working, you don't decide that we're not going to take border borders. They perform different functions. And I think it created a set of chaos that did not really augur well for regional and even global diplomacy. Now, the visa issue, first of all, this president, has made it very clear he's very Pan-African, but also he wants to open up, the country. He doesn't want Kenya to be closed. Now, the concerns, I think, is, are we going to allow everybody to come into the country? Because visas are supposed to be, to manage certain type of interactions. But at the same time, they're only helpful also when they're reciprocal. So if we're going to have visa-free for the Czech Republic, we expect that the Czech Republic is going to have visa-free for us. Now, that is a challenge, because when a country is part of the EU, how is it going to make itself visa-free for us when other EU countries perhaps are reluctant, to do the same thing?
Yeah.
So the element of reciprocity may be lacking. Indeed, what may happen is they may end up benefiting a whole lot more than we actually are. So unless there are other things they're going to do to make it easier for actually us to do that, but generally the aspect of reciprocity is very, very important. So we have to be careful. Number two, in an era of international crime and terrorism, I think we also have to be very guarded, because there are certain parts of the world where perhaps they need to be very thorough checkup before someone is allowed in. Or else, we may be flooded with all manner of bad things. Now, I'm not trying to be, xenophobic about, foreigners. Kenya, we are known to be one of the most open countries on the continent. But I think even as we implement this and we open the country to business, to tourism and stuff like that, we really also need to be careful, number one, to ensure we are not compromising on national security by making ourselves visa-free, especially in the age of terror and transnational crimes. But secondly, that there's an element of reciprocity in which we can also actually benefit, or else we're going to become a very easy dumping ground of all undesirables from the rest of the world.
Right. My music is up. I think Noami Dama will hear from you as well, and Peter Kagwanja just on that visa issue as well. Comment also on the current circling back of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, addressing back its docket, firmly as it is right now, moving forward. And when we come back as well, we shall talk about the cost of living a bit before we proceed on what is happening in Ethiopia right now, and also in South Africa regarding also the Israel-Hamas conflict that is ongoing. We take a short break. You're watching Global Today here on Morning Prime. Don't go away.